Hello everybody, Steve here, back with another update on my 1972 Pirates replay. So, as you'll see in a minute, I played 3 additional games in the replay over the last couple of days. This time I am using time travel baseball. You may recall, if you're a subscriber, I did record a video recently about the TTBX product, which is some enhanced materials that can be used with time travel. I pretty much used the time travel game itself, but I did use some charts from TTBX. You'll see here on the screen my 1972 Pirates yearbook, which I got when I went to my first baseball game in 1972 in Three River Stadium. And of course, the sticker they overlaid, which has the 1971 World Champions indication. And in the lower left, you see what for me is a famous picture of Manny Sanguillen, who is elated at having just won the World Series. And then across the top, you have 3 Hall of Famers, Stargell, Mazeroski, and Roberto Clemente. And the bottom right, you have the 2 main pitchers, starting pitchers for the Pirates, Doc Ellis and Steve Blass. So with that, let's go on. The sim list has not changed in terms of what I'm going to include in this project, so I'm not going to repeat any more than just show you the list. So another update on the final standings for the National League. This series that I played was the San Diego Padres. It was a doubleheader followed by a single game. This is the second doubleheader within a week. And Padres finished last in the Western Division, 36.5 games out. They only won 58 games, lost 95. Pretty close to their Pythagorean expectation. They were 11th in runs scored and worst in the league in runs allowed. They had a manager, it looks like, for the first 11 games, and then Don Zimmer took over for the rest. Don't know any more details about why that was. Assuming you can see this, these are just some of the snapshots of some of the main players for the Padres. In terms of batters, Nate Colbert was probably the most productive, and I think he was the cleanup hitter, 111 RBIs. Leron Lee was reasonably productive. He had a 300 batting average, a little bit of power, not a lot. And then the rest of the team is pretty mediocre. So when you compare the Pirates to the Padres batting average was about 50 points higher than the Padres, something like 274 versus something like 224, something like that. And the Pirates' ERA was 1 full point lower than the Padres' ERA. As it relates to the pitchers, a couple guys, Steve Arlen and Clay Kirby, carried a pretty heavy load. Fred Norman as well. They all had over 200 innings pitched. Arlen lost 21 games, even though his ERA was 3.6, probably because they didn't score a lot of runs for him. Yeah, Kirby actually had a decent WAR if you look there. But I think the one issue I noticed with these pitchers is they issued a lot of walks, and so that inflated their whip a bit. And then in the case of Arlen and Norman, they both had double-digit wild pitches. So just some anecdotes there. If you can see this, these are the 1972 Topps cards for the Padres. When I assembled my set, way back when, I organized them by team. I'm in the process of trying to organize them by number and put them in better holders, but so you can see some of the names that we just saw. And the 1972 cards had, for certain players, had a main card and an in-action card, which you see a few of those there. Here's the rest of those cards. I see Johnny Jeter there. He actually was on a rookie card in a Pirates uniform, and he played for the Pirates a little bit in '69 and a little bit more in 1970. I really don't know the circumstances for him moving on to the Padres. And then you see Cito Gaston. Clarence was his real name. I think he later became a manager himself. So that's the Padres. The replay itself, in real life, up at the top, you can see the Pirates dominated the Padres in a certain sense of the word, winning 12-5, 1-0 in 18 innings, and 11-2. So in terms of the table, the actual win-loss for the series was 3-0. In the sim itself, it was two wins for the Pirates and one loss. And all the scores were something in the neighborhood of like 7-2. At least the first two games were 7-2, where they split. And then the Pirates won the last game 5-1. I've decided to add to these slides the Roberto Clemente 3000 hit watch. Most of you probably know that in 1972, he finished on the last day or the next to last day of the season, and he finished with his 3,000th hit, which would turn out to be his last regular season game. In my sim, in my replay, he needs 80 more hits to hit 3,000. The challenge here with him is he did not play 100% of the games. I'm guessing maybe about 2/3 of the games. It's been a while since I looked. So, for example, in this last game, he had a day off. He didn't play, and when he had a day off, I'm not seeing that he's pinch hitting either. The other thing I'll say about the sim is I thought I might get bored playing the same team over and over again, but in terms of the Pirates, they made full use of their roster. They had a pretty active platooning system, which creates a lot of variety in the lineups. But just in general, with like guys like Clemente getting days off and other people, it is creating a lot of variety in the Pirates lineups. Next up in the replay is going to be a series against the Dodgers, and I'm going to be using stratomatic cards. And those were a full set of 1972 stratomatic cards were given to me by a friend in the hobby, Tom. Tom and I actually got to know each other and shared a lot of card creation knowledge for long ball, which long ball will be coming later in the replay. So with that, I'm going to transition here to talk about time travel baseball. I always come up with links, important links. They will be in the description to the video. They are listed here. The first one is the Downey Games website. If you want to buy time travel in its current form, you can do it there at Downey Games. Downey bought it off of the original creator of the game. And the game is probably about 98% the same as it was from the original creator. I've heard that there's some very slight changes that were made, but yeah, if you need the current game and want to pay for it, you can do that. On the other hand, there is a Facebook page for time travel baseball. Ivan Diaz kind of coordinates that. He's probably the most avid time travel baseball person on earth. And you can get a lot of free stuff at that Facebook page. You can get rules, you can get charts, you can get uh, uh, what are called gamble cards. We'll talk about those in a minute. You can get teams. I'd say most of or all of which are home brewed, but you can get teams. I did a YouTube video on that TTBX product. It was more or less an unboxing, but I encourage you to check that out. And then we'll talk about the subject of 50-50 math at the end. If you're interested, you can go back and watch my video about 50-50 math in baseball sims. I always appreciate it if you like my videos, if you like them. Whether you like them or not, comments are appreciated, and you can always subscribe to my channel. It's really up to you. I sometimes talk slowly, so if you want to increase your replay speed to 1.25 times, that may help save a few seconds of your life. Okay, time travel baseball. These are some sample cards. These are actually some of the 1972 cards that I used in my replay here. What you have here are the pitchers who were used less often by the Pirates, or in the case of Garber and McKee, they are fringe pitchers. And then you have one of the Padres catchers, Fred Kendall, and Nate Colbert. There's a lot of things that you can find on time travel baseball cards. Some of them are on these cards right here, and some of them I'm going to show you later. But obviously you have the results. And the cards are small, by the way. The cards are 1 7/8 inches wide and 3 1/4 inches tall. Probably a little taller than History Maker baseball cards. I didn't have much issue with dealing with them. I did cut them out and put them in a stack and work with them that way. It would be better if they were bigger, perhaps. And the TTBX cards, for example, are much bigger. They're probably the shape of like a baseball card or an apba card or whatever. Result symbols are important. We'll talk more about that. So, for example, on Bob Miller's card, there's an exclamation point after the triple up on the 1-1 result. Basically, that's a split result, and it's either going to be a triple or a home run. It's 50-50. We'll just talk more about that whole construct here in a minute. Pitchers can be a workhorse, which, as I understand it, they're not subject to fatigue. Pitchers can be an ace. Now, that didn't come up in my games, but it's a special consideration that I think gives you a boost in certain situations. I see Bob Johnson as a fiery pitcher. I do not know what that means. There are hard luck pitchers. I think those are pitchers that as it sounds, maybe have some issues with their performances, although I'm not sure why Luke Walker got that. His ERA wasn't really that bad. There are bunting ratings. You can be a fine bunter or no rating, and there may be one other bunting rating, I'm not sure, but you see Ramon Hernandez gets a fine bunter rating. Everybody gets a fielding rating for not only their primary position, but if there's a secondary position. I think the ratings go from 0 to 3. You can also get a star designation on your card, which is an additional fielding rating, which comes into play. It can create a clutch play or an amazing defensive play, and so that comes up once in a while. In the lower right of the cards, there's card strength, which is indication of how many hit and walk chances are on their card. And so that's one way, just looking at the card, to know which ones are better or worse. There's also dollar signs at the bottom of certain cards. And Time Travel Baseball originally started out more or less as like an all-time greats set, if I'm not mistaken, and each player had a draft value, and so those dollar signs influenced how you were, whatever constraints there were in constructing your team. You had to balance your team or stay within a budget, if I understand correctly. Pitchers basically have a hitting card. Most pitchers just use a generic one, but there could be a pitcher that has a high batting average who might use a stronger hitting card, and there may be even more, but that didn't come into play in my replay. You'll see on the pitcher cards on roll number 7, it says take a gamble, and roll number 10, it says pressure play. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then the other thing, Gene Garber didn't pitch that much, maybe 9 innings, I don't know, in the whole season. He actually went on to have a nice career with Philadelphia and Atlanta. But he was early in his career with the Pirates, but in his short stint, he did give up, I think, 3 home runs in 9 innings or something like that. So you see a lot of home runs on his card. So I'm going to show you some sample players. Ron Hunt is infamous, I think, for getting hit by pitches. He was hit 26 times in 1972 and 50 in 1971. So his card does actually have an explicit hit by pitch chance on it. And you can see up on top, he is a star second baseman, and he's a fast runner and a fine bunter. The runners they either have no rating, or they may even be slow, but they either have no rating, fast, or daring. And the running rating is primarily a stolen base rating, but it's also used as a speed rating in terms of base runner advancement. And with that, I think we'll go on. Oh, you can see in the lower left-hand corner, I believe that's supposed to be Ron Hunt's batting average as well. So you do have some indication of the card. There is batting indication right or left, and there's a little bit of left-right split impacts built into the cards. I haven't studied them very closely. It's possible that question mark is an indication of the splits having an impact, but don't quote me. One of the singles gets impacted. So here's Lou Brock. There you see his daring rating at 63 stolen bases in 1972. Apparently wasn't a very good left fielder. I don't know. You can see a lot of his results have a plus sign in parentheses after them. And you can kind of think of that as a jump rating. So when that comes into play, then he I guess he has to attempt to steal, I believe. But that is a good feature, even though stealing is not that sophisticated in time travel baseball. The fact that they have included some sort of a good lead or jump rating in the game, I think is a good thing. I mentioned gamble cards. So there's a talent card and there's an error card, and there's 50 talent cards and there's 50 error cards. And you can think of it a little bit as a fast action deck. And it also works as a kind of a 50-50 split, kind of like the decider die does in History Maker Baseball. And so you can see that silhouette of this card has a batter silhouette, and that comes into play. And you can see that these cards have 4 rows, and the 4 rows are indicative of where the lead runner is. So if the bases are empty, then there's no lead runner. So do what's on the bottom there. But if the lead runner is at first, you take the top row, et cetera, et cetera. And I put percentages down the side because in general, that's about how often those situations occur for a given plate appearance. And so more than half of the plays are going to be taken off the bottom row. The other thing you see here are results in bold, and then you see results, in this case, in purple or blue. And what that means is in the advanced game, which I tried to play, those blue things can come into play. So this is where things like fielding can come into play, like at the very bottom. The guy hits a double and he's out at third unless he's daring, and he does get a triple. But overriding that is if there's a star center fielder, he actually tracks down the ball and it turns out to deep fly out. So that gives you a feel for how fielding is embedded in the game. There are also error cards which have a slightly different nature to them, but they work the same way. Yeah, that's basically that. At the top of each card, you see an indication if it's a right-hand batter or a left-hand batter, and whether the ball was hit in the infield or outfield. Because in the cards, the out results don't say where the ball was hit. So you would need to flip one of these cards if it's important to you to know where the ball was hit for an out. Now, a lot of times the body of these cards will show where the ball was hit, so you use that instead. And then on this particular card, you can kind of see the silhouette of the pitcher. This is Steve Carlton. He has an ace designation, which again, I don't know exactly what that gives him, but he was an ace. He won a significant percentage of the Phillies games that year. He went 27-10. He pitched 41 starts and had 30 complete games, and he struck out 310 batters. And batters had an average of 207 against him. So you can see with the green arrows, he had a fair number of strikeout results on his card. We'll talk a little bit about this later, and I think he should actually have more, a few more anyway. But you can kind of see how the game is constructed. We talked about the take a gamble and pressure play cards. Anytime a 7 is read off the pitcher card, you flip over one of these gamble cards. Doesn't matter which kind it is, you just flip it over. Now, if there's a pressure play result here off the pitcher card, if the defense is what is considered alert, then you read the result off of a talent card. But if the defense is considered whatever the opposite of alert is, we'll see it in a minute, then you read the pressure play result off of the error card. You can see he's a fine bunter at the bottom. You can see his trade value or draft value has $4 on it. So I did create a dice roller and helper in Excel for time travel, and somebody in the time travel Facebook group, I think, enhanced it a little bit more. And then I enhanced it some more so it would automatically bring up the gamble cards. And I started out playing with this, but I ended up abandoning it. I ended up playing with the cards and the dice and the physical gamble cards just because it was so much easier. And part of the issue was that I'm keeping score in Excel, and so to use this helper in Excel just wasn't working out. So I've given you some thoughts on time travel. There are a ton of videos out there if you want to learn more about it and see people playing it. But in some senses of the word, time travel is a kind of a combination of stratomatic and history maker baseball in terms of how the engine is constructed. And the stratomatic part I mentioned or alluded to is more that it's kind of a 50-50 game. The history maker baseball part is that there's a lot of narrative that goes with it. And as I've already said, defense and the narrative part and rare plays generally are driven by the gamble cards. I thought there was a pretty reasonable learning curve. I think the rules could be better written, but I've watched enough videos and figured it out. So, and the actual gameplay was pretty smooth. And now might be a good time to say I actually enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. And we've already talked about the symbols, but the symbols play a fairly big role in the play outcomes. And they, in many cases, act as splits. We'll talk about the precision or lack thereof in the game in a minute and how they overcome that. There are various result types. There's like 4 different types of singles and multiple types of groundouts, and those heavily influence what happens with runner advancement. Careless or alert defense. Careless was the word I couldn't think of. So I read the basic rules, and the basic rules said the home team is alert and the visiting team is careless. So that's what I did for all 3 games. At the end, when I started really questioning it, I realized that, well, that's not how you're supposed to do it with the advanced game. What you're supposed to do is take all the fielding ratings of the individual players, add them up, and the team with the higher rating is the alert team, and the team with the lower rating is the careless team. And at least in the last game, the Pirates added up to 19 and the Padres added up to 14. So the Pirates should have been alert and the Padres should have been careless. But as I said, I had it the other way around, and it really has a big impact. Maybe too much, I'm not sure. But basically, careless teams, will make more errors or just general foul ups. And in particular, careless teams have less double plays and alert teams have more. And that was the biggest impact that I saw. The Pirates were hitting into double plays. The Padres were not. And then, so more to come maybe on that at some point. We already talked about the combined stolen base and speed or running rating. I don't really like that in Sims. I think the TTBX version of time travel may have separated those ratings. We already talked about the fielder positions. We already talked about the dice roller. And now we're going to talk about 50-50 math. And I'm not going to beat this horse too heavily. And I will disclaim the fact that I may not have a full grasp on this particular issue, but I think it is an issue. So if you don't know, the way time travel works is you have a red die and a white die. They're 2d6, so there's only 36 possibilities. If the red is higher, then you read off the pitcher card. You sum them up and you read off the pitcher card. If the white is higher, you sum them up and read off the batter card. If they're equal, you flip over a gamble card, and depending on the silhouette, it tells you whether to read off the pitcher or the batter card. So, long story short, out of the 36 chances, 18 of them are going to come off the pitcher card, and 18 of them are going to come off the batter card. So that's where I get the 50-50 from. This is just another graph that kind of shows you how the results are split up, for the whole 100% of the 36 chances. So what's that really come to? Somebody shared this with me, and this is somebody who actually created a card creation tool. And this is a Babe Ruth 1927. And you see on the far right, I think, is an actual original time travel baseball card. And then on the far left is a homebrew. And in the middle is a homebrew. And basically, if you just take Babe Ruth's stats and divide the pie chart up by percentage of plate appearances and multiply it by 18 or 36, as the case may be, you'll get a chart that looks like the one on the left. But if you do what I call 50-50 math, then he'll actually get a lot more home runs because he was an outlier. And that's the whole issue with 50-50 systems is in order to get accurate statistics, you have to deal with the outliers. In this particular guy's spreadsheet, he has a toggle, so you can do it either way, whichever way you want. I only bring this up because I think a lot of the homebrew teams that I see are done on similar to what's on the left. And I alluded to this when I showed you the Steve Carlton card, where I thought maybe he didn't have enough chances for strikeouts. By my calculations, I think he should have about 30% of his plate appearances should result in a strikeout. So then when you combine it with the average batter, he'll get the right number of strikeouts. I don't want to beat this to death. I could be completely off base here, although at least one person has affirmed, what I believe to be the case. All that said, I liked Time Travel Baseball. I will probably use it one more time in my replay. And with that, thanks for listening. Take care.